Good morning. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners Agenda Setting Work Session for Tuesday, July 6, 2021. It is 9:03 a.m. My name is Ty Manser, Chair of the Board. To my left is Vice Chair Commissioner Gary Edwards, County Manager Mira Chavez here, and Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell. Lots of folks on our Zoom. Commissioner Mejia is participating at this point by Zoom, and Clerk of the Board Amy Davis, Public Information Megan Porter, and our new Criminal Justice Program Manager Leah Landon is with us. We have
just this Commissioner Gary Edwards.
Yeah, introduction. Okay, so we have public access through our Thurston County YouTube channel. And with that, let's just jump right to item number 1, COVID-19 update. Director Shelley Slaughter from Public Health is with us. Go ahead, Shelley.
Good morning, Commissioners. Today is day 517 of our COVID-19 emergency response. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yeah, we can now, yeah.
Halfway through that sentence. Yeah.
Okay, my apologies. Shelley Slaughter, Director of Thurston County Public Health and Social Services. Today is day 517 of our Thurston County COVID emergency response. In Washington State to date, there have been 452,483 confirmed cases of COVID-19 since the pandemic began, with 5,939 Washingtonians that have lost their lives. This includes 11,100 Thurston County residents that have been confirmed to have COVID-19 since this pandemic began, with 107 new cases occurring in the last week. This puts us at 85.2 on the Governor's Risk Assessment Dashboard, which continues to decline. There have been 112 Thurston County residents who have died, unfortunately, and 726 people that have been hospitalized to date, and that includes 9 new hospitalizations in the last week. 89.7% of our regional hospital beds are currently occupied, with 6.2% of those beds occupied by COVID patients. This represents 107 people in our region that are currently hospitalized with COVID-19. 9% of our ICU beds are occupied by COVID patients, which represents 47 people that are seriously ill with COVID in the ICU. Our test positivity rate continues to remain stable at 3.7% test positivity. We do have testing available today in Rochester at Rochester Organization of Families, tomorrow in the city of Lacey, Thursday at Union Gospel Mission, and Friday at Evergreen State College. We've had 62 congregate care outbreaks to date, with 2 that our team are currently investigating. In terms of vaccinations, in Thurston County vaccine providers have administered 286,056 doses of COVID-19 vaccine, and the total population that has initiated vaccine in Thurston County is 51.8%. Our total population vaccinated is currently 47.2%. Of those 16 and older who have initiated, 61.7% have had at least 1 dose of COVID-19 vaccine. This is in comparison to the state metric for that same age category initiating, which as of this morning stood at 69.1%. I would anticipate they will be updating that later today to reflect some higher percentage rates. Of those 16 and older who are fully vaccinated in Thurston County, it's 56.6%. And of those 12 and over who have initiated at least 1 dose, we are at 60%. We have included in our data that we are sharing with the public on our website, as well as in your packet, some additional zip code level data, as well as Department of Defense data. In terms of Department of Defense personnel that have received at least 1 dose of COVID-19 vaccine, that is not reflected in the state metrics that I just shared with you, 11,712 service members and their families that reside in Thurston County have initiated at least 1 dose and 10,848 of those personnel are fully vaccinated. In terms of our Thurston County's initiation and fully vaccinated rates, that does vary by zip code, and that helps to inform where we focus our efforts. Our highest percentage of residents that are fully vaccinated is in the 98501 zip code, and our lowest number of population vaccinated in South County is in the 98597 zip code. Thus, this week, we have lots of mobile events planned in the South County region to ensure that we have equitable access to vaccines available in our community. We are at Capitol Mall every day, 7 days a week. In addition, our mobile team today will be at Timberline High School from 1 to 4, administering Pfizer doses to those 12 and up. We will also be tomorrow in Bucota at the Bucota Community Center from 4 to 7 p.m. On Thursday, we'll be at the Yelm Community Center from 10 to 2. Friday, we will be at North Thurston High School from 8 to 1, again administering Pfizer for those 12 and up. On Saturday, we'll be at the Tenino Farmers Market from 10 to 3. And on Sunday, we will be at Sacred Heart Catholic Church, as well as the Rock Church. If anyone is interested in where they can get a vaccine, I encourage them to visit a vaccine locator or our Thurston County Public Health and Social Services website. We continue to add mobile clinics all the time and have lots of COVID vaccine available for anyone who gets it, and strongly encourage those that haven't yet done it that are eligible to do so as soon as possible. And with that, I'll answer any questions you may have.
Commissioner Edwards?
No, sir.
I don't either. I see Commissioner Mejia right through the door, also on the screen. Any questions for Shelley?
No questions at this time. Thank you.
Okay, Shelley, thank you. This report's getting more and more comprehensive. Yeah, it's good stuff in there. Okay, where are we? Number 2, homeless strategies. There's Keely Marino. Good morning,
Good
Keely.
morning. Good morning, commissioners. Keely Marino with Public Health and Social Services. I just have a rent assistance update for you this morning, nice and brief. So as of today, Community Action Council has served 740 Thurston County households in process. There are another 642 households, which means they're just waiting for some paperwork, or the check has just not been sent at this time, but they're in process. There's 817 households in queue for appointments. And they've been able to pay out $4.8 million or so in rental assistance, and then $155,000 in utility assistance. CYS, which serves the community services, which serves young people in housing ages 18 to 24. They have served 49 households. They've got 91 in process, and about 76 others awaiting to have their initial appointments. So they've spent out about $403,000 so far in rental assistance, and about $1,400 in utility assistance. So continuing to truck along in the rent assistance department. And other than that, I don't have anything to report for homeless response today.
Commissioner Mejia?
No questions at this time.
No, sir.
Thank you, Keely.
Okay, have a good day.
All right, item 3 is to review the draft agenda for next Tuesday afternoon's meeting, July 13th. Because this afternoon, our board meeting will not occur, given the holiday yesterday and was canceled last week. So we'll pick up with July 13th. Meeting will be called to order at 2 p.m. Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Vice Chair Edwards. Consideration of the agenda and board meeting minutes. Presentation from Pretrial Services is a proclamation for pretrial probation and parole supervision week.
Thank you, commissioners. This is a yearly consideration for you to pass a proclamation for the week of July 18, in this case through July 24, 2021, as a pretrial probation and parole supervision week. In your packet is a copy of the proclamation for your review, and if you have any comments this week, please let us know before we finalize the proclamation. Mary Ann Clear, the Director of Pretrial Services, will be in attendance, and she will be providing some words as you consider the proclamation.
Okay. We'll go to item 1, opportunity for the public to address the board, and that'll play out as it does. Item 2 is county manager's update.
I don't have any pending items that I need to follow up, Commissioner.
Okay. 3 consent items. Actually, there's 4, it looks like. There's 2 Cs. So C should be D, and then the title should say A through D. So 3A is Public Works, reappointment to the Solid Waste Advisory Committee.
Yeah, Commissioners, this is items 3A and 3B are related. And this is just a placeholder, depending on how you would like to move forward on those 2 appointments. The first one is for you to consider reappointing Mr. Delroy Cox, and he is the waste industry representative into the Thurston County Solid Waste Advisory Committee. And if you decide to reappoint Mr. Cox, his term will be from July 2021 to July 2024. Mr. Cox has been serving on the SWAC committee for several years, and also he has worked in the industry for over 43 years. I believe he has retired from that particular industry. And the next item, also for your consideration, and this is to appoint Dr. Richard Moon. And he is a citizen representative for District 2. And the application is included in your packet as well. If you, and again, this is a placeholder for your consideration. If you needed more time to review his application, both applications, we can certainly move that to a later date. So for both A and B.
Questions?
No, sir.
Oh, sure. I guess my question is, are these July 21st, July 20th? Are these the only 2 applicants? I'm looking at Amy, clerk of the board. Are these the only 2 applicants for the 2 spots?
Yes, the only 2 applications received for those.
And they came directly to you, or does this come to us through SWAC?
No, the SWAC processes these first and provides the recommendation to the board.
Okay, so by virtue of them
Yes.
coming, they've been kind of given a thumbs up by SWAC?
Yes, correct.
SWAC hasn't met yet, because I'm on the SWAC committee, so we meet tomorrow. So probably a recommendation will be on the agenda for.
You haven't discussed Dr. Moon, for example?
No.
Who's new? Okay, well then, we'll take this up.
And again, next Tuesday morning, if you feel that you don't, it's not the right time for those appointments and reappointment, you can move this item to later.
All right, Commissioner, can you give us a report next week?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Background. Okay, very good. Okay, that'll take us, okay, that's 3A, that's 3B. 3C is a voucher list that we'll see this week. And 3D, actually, is last week's voucher list, and 3D is this one. So I guess as to 3C, any questions from the board or wishes to take out?
No, sir.
No, okay. So that's the consent agenda. We'll start then with item 4A under department items. DSHS agreement, specialized recreation program.
For your consideration, Commissioners, is for you to renew the agreement that we have with the Washington State Department of Social Services and Health Services. And this agreement is from July 1st, 2021 through September 30th, 2023. This is related to respite care services that we provide to developmental disabilities individuals here in the county, and is administered by the Public Health and Social Services Department. This particular extension agreement does not include a funding, because this is based on a reimbursable basis. So as soon as we provide those activities as part of this program, then we get reimbursed by the state. Some of the respite activities included in this program, and again, is to provide those who are part of the developmental disabilities program within the county. Includes swimming, bowling, art classes, dances, day trips, and regional destinations. And really is aimed to be inclusive to those members of our community. And I believe we have Margaret Bagley here, Bagley. Maybe Shelley can cover if you have any.
Good morning, Commissioners. Margaret here. Hopefully. Is my camera up? Good morning.
Gotcha, Margaret. Anything you want to add to what Ramiro had to say, or you think we ought to know?
Romero covered everything. We are looking forward to starting the programs back up eventually once we get the all clear and it's safe to do so. So our clients are very excited.
Shelley, anything?
Nothing to add, sir.
Commissioner?
No questions.
No, sir. No, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Public Works is next. Project Prospectus and Local Agency Agreement, or CP 61320.
Commissioners, for your consideration is to authorize the Department of Public Works to sign what we call as the prospectus and local agency agreement. And this is to receive $1,819,803 from federal funds to help us in the construction of the Little Rock and 113 bridge in some intersection improvements. This particular bridge, also known as L5, was constructed in 1924 and has deemed to be functionally obsolete. As you may recall on the bridge assessment process, there's two categories: is the structurally deficient and functionally obsolete. The structurally deficient is, for instance, when you put weight restrictions on a bridge, it no longer can serve their purpose based on the structural capacity. Functionally obsolete is structurally is in place, but doesn't serve the traffic flow. In this case, there is a two-lane bridge. It needs to be one because the lanes are very narrow, and this is the purpose of this grant. And the way how we secured the grant for the design and construction is to go through the project prospectus and local agency agreement with the state. There is a matching requirements on this federal funds, and the matching requirements will be coming from the road fund. I believe we have Bill Richardson here. Would you like to add any additional information?
I believe the county manager covered it quite well. This bridge needs to be replaced because it is too narrow, and we're hoping to get our funds approved here.
I do have some questions. My first question is, we're receiving, can you repeat how much we're receiving? It's $1,800,000.
$819,803.
Yep.
And is this the, how much the project is going to last, or is there gonna be some county money put into this?
Yeah, it will require a county match. This is just the federal allocation. What is the estimated project cost at this point without committing to the ultimate number?
I'm not sure we have let me look.
And will the county match be coming out of road fund?
The road fund.
Yes. We do not have the estimate matched up completely yet. I'm not sure what our total is. Brian Meyer is very good at this, but he is out today. So we have a 13% match, I believe, on this. So
yeah, the last time I was aware of the minimum required match for federal funds was 12.8%. Is still that the case, Bill?
correct.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Edwards, go ahead.
Is this any part of a detour for I-5?
Little Rock Road is often used as a detour for I-5, yes.
And is the state helping us on this project?
Yeah, that's what our grants are coming from, the state and federal grants.
So it is both, okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Let's go to 5B, also Public Works, resolution for a grant for Gate Belmore Trail Development.
You have seen a similar item in the past, Commissioner. This is a little bit of unusual for you to pass a resolution to authorize the Department of Public Works to apply for a grant. But that is a requirement by the Washington State Recreation Conservation Office, also known as RCO. And this particular proposal is for you to pass this resolution authorizing the Department of Public Works to apply for $600,000 that will be utilized for to improve the 14-mile Gate Belmore trail. A couple of years ago, the board authorized removing the railroad ties along this trail, and that is not open to the public. So this is going to give us the opportunity to start working on the implementation and development of this section of the trail. Ed Marston is here. Do you like to any additional questions?
No, not at this time.
No, sir.
When it says, Ed, like, let's say sounds like we're applying for a grant. We don't know if we'll get it. If we're successful and we had $600,000 and it says develop a portion, and remember you made reference to 14 miles. It's not going to develop 14 miles of trail. What does it mean by develop? Develop meaning making it usable for the public, or is this a kind of a phase toward that goal? I know this is a long-term goal we've got working on this long trail. Could you just elaborate a little bit, Ed?
Yeah, good morning, commissioners. Ed Marston, Thurston County Parks Manager. Essentially, what we're looking to do is kind of a staged development of the 14-mile trail. This is a little bit over 2 miles. It's a section from 66th Avenue, which is near Kennydale Park, and it would go south to 88th Avenue. It's about 2.14 miles that we would look to develop, pave, and open to the public. The public is currently using this section now, and it's falling into a state more and more of a state of disrepair. We have a couple of trestles, old railroad wooden structures that are in disrepair that, you know, we're hoping to replace. But it also, what it does is it connects Kennydale Park to residents of South Thurston County. They don't have any trails in that area. They are underserved as far as parks go at this time, and we're looking to help remedy that.
Yes.
Okay, Ed, as a matter of clarification, you stated the public is currently using, but is this portion of the trail actually open?
No, it's not open. It's not open. It's marked as trail. The trail's closed right now, but it's such a long linear trail with connections to backyards, communities, housing developments that we can't, with no fences, we can't prevent people from accessing the trail at this time. So we have had reports that people are currently using it. We advise people that it is a closed trail and that they should not use it. But the reality of it is people do access it at this time.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that that was the case. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
And then, you know, when I see Gate, I think Rochester down in the, in fact, the far corner of that area. And is that where we're headed with this trail?
Yes. So it goes from 66th Ave from near Kennydale Park all the way down to the town of Gate. And then, you know, once that's developed, hopefully, that can then open possibilities to continuing on south from there with partnerships.
And I'd have to get my map out, but does that get to Gate by following like the Black River or in, like Gate Road? And how's it gonna get to that from
So
where it's gonna stop here to where it's gonna eventually end up in Gate?
So the first section, the northernmost section, which goes from 66th Ave to 128th down in Little Rock, it essentially parallels Little Rock Road. From 128th Ave in Little Rock, it cuts across rural areas, and it does kind of follow Gate Road all the way down to the town of Gate near Moon Road.
Hey, Ed, at some point we had an alignment of this new trail and a map. Can you send us a copy of that? I can share that with the commissioners.
I absolutely can.
Thank you.
I'm just wondering how that fits with our new guardrails that we're.
Yeah, and that will give you a good perspective as to where the proposed trail goes. And at some point even we were contemplating having an option that will actually connect to Tenino. So that's part of the long-term plan. So yeah, as you said, the 14 miles, the small amount of money will not get us the 14 miles. But it's a similar approach what we implemented on the Chehalis Western Trail. We get money and we improve as much as we can, and we just keep chugging along. And this is the same approach and the strategy that we have utilized for the last 20 years. And I have to tell you, Thurston County has one of the most wonderful trail systems in Western Washington.
All right, thank you, Ed.
You're welcome.
Okay, so this is a mercifully short agenda after last week's marathon. So that's good. We'll have our standing reports from commissioners and the county manager. And then we'll have 2 public hearings at or about 3 o'clock. First one is Public Works, Transportation Impact Fee Rate Schedule Update.
Yes, commissioners, you will hear public testimony on your agenda. They have 2 actions. One is to close the public hearing, and the next is to approve the resolution. We'll take the second action out. I'd recommend at this point is for you to consider closing the public hearing after you receive public testimony. In this related, I think it will be helpful to have a follow-up on the traffic impact fees after the public testimony, especially related to the exemptions related to ADUs that you may consider. And this is part of the new law that is going to be taking place on July 25th. So it's coming up.
You mean daycares? Daycare?
Yep, daycare. ADU, sorry, your ADUs already. So related to daycare, I know the board has engaged on many conversations related to daycares and how you can provide assistance to that. So I don't think it's too premature for you to consider taking an action on this without having a full breadth of the new law. And so that will be my recommendation at this point.
Okay, any questions from the board?
And Matt is here, if you want to ask him any questions. Are you there, Matt?
Thanks, Matt. I think we're good on that. We'll just hear what the public has to say on that, and then we'll have a follow-up briefing. Sounds like the suggestion that makes sense, since we have a new element wrinkled in based on the legislative change from last month or 2 ago. Okay, and the second public hearing is a public health and social services item, program year 2021 HUD annual action plan. And I see Jacinda Stelchis with us. Do you want to give us an overview of this one? Something we do annually, if I recall correctly.
Yes, commissioners, we are asking that you guys close the public hearing for our program year 21 annual action plan and approve the resolution that allows us to submit that plan to HUD. Just a quick reminder that this is closing also our public comment period, which began June 11th. And then again, we would pass on our annual action plan to HUD for their approval, awarding community development block grant and home investment partnerships program funds.
Anything from the board?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay, thank you, Jacinda. Take that up next week. And then we'll go to Board of Health. So that could be 3:30 or could be a little later. But directly following the public hearings will be Board of Health. And we have a proposed agenda. So the meeting will be called to order, consideration of agenda and approval of meeting minutes from May 11th. Proclamation and presentation. Shelley, this is under summer, item is summer safety with Sammy Berg. Does this belong under proclamation and presentation? Is it presentation? Is that what it's?
Yes, that should be a presentation.
Okay, very good. Why don't you go ahead and, so we're in Board of Health mode. So Shelley Slaughter's back as our administrator of the Board of Health. What do we need to know about the summer safety presentation?
Thank you so much, Commissioner. So Sammy Berg, who is our program manager for our Food and Environmental Services program, will provide a brief presentation on summer safety and provide an overview for the Board of Health and for the public about things that our residents can do to make sure they and their families are safe this summer, to include safe eating and food handling, reducing the dangers of drowning and staying away from lakes that have advisories or are not advised to swim in, as well as staying away from pests such as bats that can carry disease.
Any questions? No. Okay. Opportunity for is there a reason, I get the Board of Health agendas are a little differently structured. Is there a reason to have that prior to the opportunity for the public to address the Board of Health? Shelley?
No, sir, there's not a reason. It's the board's prerogative, whatever order you would like to see this agenda in. I believe this does follow the standard format, but happy to modify that.
Is there any objection to moving public comment up in front, just so if people are there, they can say their piece in case they need to move on? Sure. So let's put switch items 2 and 3. Okay, and then department item, resolution for appointment of interim health officers.
Yes, sir. So last year in 2020, the Board of Health appointed alternative health officers to serve in the event that our health officer, who's currently appointed, Dr. Damiana Abdimalik, is unable to serve on vacation or incapacitated. This becomes especially important during emergencies. And the past board action was to appoint any qualified health officer in the state of Washington to be appointed at the discretion of the health officer, myself, the county manager, or the chair of Board of Health. In addition, last year, the board took an additional action to allow Dr. Diana Yu, our former Thurston County health officer, who is retired and not currently serving as a state health officer, but meets all the provisions and qualifications of a health officer. And so we would like to add Diana Yu to the list, Dr. Diana Yu to the list, in addition to other qualified state health officers in the event that Dr. Abdimalik needs to be absent for a period of time that requires us to have an alternate available. And the proposal for this item would be that it would be in effect until revoked. There is nothing in statute that requires this to be an annual action, and this would allow the board to have more flexibility going forward.
Yes, can I have a little bit of more background on this, since I was not here for when this resolution was passed? Was it just in case Dr. A was undisposed or on vacation?
Yes, that's right. It is a statutory responsibility of the Board of Health to ensure that there is an active health officer appointed and able to serve our county. The health officer appointed is Dr. Abdimalik, but she does have a vacation plan where she will be traveling out of the country sometime this summer. So we want to make sure that in the event she's not able to be reached, that we have an alternate health officer that can serve Thurston County if needed.
And how many alternates are there? I mean, is there 3, 5?
The way that we have this structured in the past is that any that there's not a set number of health officers that we would appoint by name, but that any qualified health officer in the state of Washington could be called upon to serve. And so we have had to enact that during this pandemic. We've had several different health officers from other counties, including the state health officer, support us in Thurston County.
Okay, thank you.
It just helps to ensure that there's a continuous health officer able to serve us at any time. This could also be beneficial in the event of an emergency such as a natural disaster.
Mr. Edwards?
I've worked with Dr. Yu quite a few years, and I'm satisfied.
Yeah. Shelley, can you, well, that's kind of the end of the specific items. We'll have the Board of Health reports on activities, health officers report, and your report. Can you remind the board what the thought or schedule is for the discussions that we may need to have on the expansion of the Board of Health?
Yes, I will actually propose to be working with County Manager Chavez to and yourself as chair of the board, Commissioner Menzer, to establish a schedule for us to begin meeting. As a reminder to everyone, this is a new law that was passed by the Washington State Legislature this year, and our Board of Health will need to expand membership by July of 2022. So that is a year away, but that will happen very fast, and so we want to start working to prepare for that.
County Manager has something on that.
Yes, I have a tentative agenda item on your August 13 planning session.
Okay.
And I will work with Shelley and give a good robust conversation on this. But I only have about 3-4 items at this point, but this is going to be one of them that may require some time of discussion. And I think it's just for us to understand the nuances of the new law. I don't expect, for the board to take an action. I think it's a continued conversation they will require. But I think it's good just to all of us to understand the nuances of the new law related to the Board of Health makeup. But I'll work with Shelley on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's an I bring it up because it's an unusual, it's a big deal, and there's a deadline there that we can't necessarily move, that's not a typical situation that the board's in, and I don't want us to get down to the last month or two, and it's just gonna be Herculean to try to put everything together. So whatever you think we need to do now, let's just start that
We'll
process.
begin the conversations. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Shelley.
Yeah, one question, sir.
Go ahead.
Is there going to be any change if we cross that threshold of 300,000 in Thurston County?
Not related to this new law.
Okay.
The new law is specifically as to the representation of the Board of Health members. So it has nothing, it's not related to the 300,000 threshold that you were talking about.
Okay.
At least what I understand of the new law at this point.
Since Commissioner brought that up, the late September was pushed back to late August, and then I heard a rumor it might be as early as late July in terms of the census data. Has anyone heard an update on that?
Well,
More
the
concrete
last,
than what I heard.
we had September, we had a conversation perhaps maybe a little bit earlier in August. I have not heard anything earlier than that.
Okay. Heard it somewhere, but may not be.
I guess the reason I bring it up is if we do expand, and I know we're gonna be maybe working with the port, a lot of other components to this, but.
You're talking about the expansion of the Board of County Commissioners?
Yes.
Okay.
But if it coincides with something we're gonna do with the Board of Health, is there a possibility that there could be district representation or something like that? I don't know what the numbers are gonna be, but at least let's be aware that we're trying to do a bunch of things at one time.
That is a good point. And I appreciate that, Commissioner. But my understanding of the new law, the Board of Health, is very prescriptive as to what the membership should be. I think that that is going to be a good conversation for you to have.
Yeah, I believe it was 4 elected officials, 1 tribal member. I think it was a total of 8, was it 8 or 7?
I think that's correct. You have the numbers in my mind, but it's very prescriptive as to what the new law is and the membership of the Board of Health.
Right, but I think you're making a good point in the sense that we're gonna have to make this change before the commission ever got changed.
Probably so.
But I think you're right that then if we made that change, the Board of Health would have to then potentially correspondingly change again because the commission, unless you took.
Well, just to recognize the fact that we may have 5 commissioners, we have tribal representation.
Be interesting if we could
West
just.
side, on the east side.
Be interesting though, if we could vote to just have 3 of, let's say you had 5 commissioners, but is it possible that we could choose 3 to serve on the Board of Health, not change the Board of Health from what we're gonna change it to?
Right.
And not have to have all 5 commissioners sitting on, if there were 5 commissioners, sitting on the Board of Health.
Yeah.
Lots of variables.
Yeah.
Yeah, a good conversation because even on how they constitutes a majority of the Board of Health and the representation of elected officials is very prescriptive.
Yeah, because if you went to 5 plus municipal, then you'd have to have 12.
You need to add more.
But anyway, we'll get there.
So then it will be we won't have many chairs in this room to have your Board of Health.
Yeah, that's gonna be interesting. Okay,
Anything
All right.
else to add on that conversation, Shelley?
No, sir. I look forward to the conversation in August.
Thank you.
okay, then that wraps, anything else to say, Shelley, about Board of Health agenda for next week? Okay, thank you. Let's move on then. Yeah, that's good work here this morning. We've got Proclamations and Awards is item 5. Clerk of the board.
Good morning, Amy Davis, Clerk of the Board. There's a draft pretrial, probation, and parole supervision week proclamation included in your packet for presentation on July 13th. Mary Ann Clear will join us along with staff members of the Pretrial Services Department, members of District Court and Juvenile Court, and the Pretrial Services Governing Board.
And that's okay, so looking at our schedule, that's it for this half of the month. We've got a farmer's market week later in the month proposed.
Yes.
Okay, anything regarding proclamations and awards?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay. Then now we're on to item 6, advisory boards and commissions.
So,
We have a decision pending there.
yes, included in your packet are the 3 applications received for the vacant farmer position on the Agriculture Advisory Committee, 1 application for the Hotel Motel Commission, and the 2 received for solid waste. Starting with Ag, these were included in your packet last week along with the majority and minority reports. You had asked I follow up to receive additional information on the vote count. And yesterday I received the email handout you should have from the chair of the committee. The chair indicates there were 4 yeas, 2 nays, and 1 abstained. I will leave it to you for discussion on appointment and timing, and I'm happy to take any follow-up questions.
There's an email here from July 5th, yesterday.
Yes, that's the email from the chair regarding the vote count.
The commissioner was asked what was the actual vote on recommending for the appointment. And the vote, as I read it, that voted passes for the recommendation, 2 opposed and 1 abstained. So total of 7 votes. What is the total makeup of the Ag Advisory Committee? Do you remember?
I believe now with the most recent appointment, there's 10. So,
Okay.
Yeah, he says at the end, please consider putting on shorter staff as we have 10 members now.
yes.
I had a meeting unrelated with Stephen Bramwell, and I asked him what the vote was. And he had said it was 5-4, but I don't know, maybe he's misremembering. I don't know if anybody was actually there to know how many people were there. voted, but,
So Amy and I attended the last advisory committee meeting at the beginning, but I didn't stay until the end. If the voting on the recommendation was at the end of that meeting, I knew it was done via email.
I assume it was done at the end of the meeting. And if so, those meetings are recorded and I can look for more information.
Is this committee not subject to open public meetings?
They are not.
They're not.
They're not, but the next week, you're gonna have a follow-up conversation on boards and commissions with Amy. And that will be one of the recommendations for the board to consider, really taking, making a requirement for all the boards and commissions to be subject to OPMA. It seems to be inconsistent. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like I remember them feeling that they weren't, but then maybe the prosecutor said they were. No, that was because the prosecutor years ago had said they weren't.
They weren't.
Then a new opinion said they were, and now I'm hearing they're not again.
I think there was a new opinion from the prosecutor. I think that opinion from the prosecutor remains. They are not required their minutes to be falling under OPMA. But I think something I know the board is striving for transparency, and OPMA provides that transparency to the public. So that will be some of the recommendations we're going to be asking you to consider in terms of the overall boards and commissions. And I think there's an opportunity there, Commissioner.
Is this worth, I mean, we've got some issues, I guess, what the facts are about how many who voted for who, a minority report. Is it worth having somebody from that board show up and give us a breakdown of what happened? Doesn't sound like anybody from the board here was in attendance at the end when whatever happened.
But the chair of the Agriculture Advisory Committee is the one who sent that email.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah, but then it sounds like there's a difference from.
I just telling you something I was told. For me, whether it's 4-2 or 5-4 doesn't change my position, so I'll take the chair's representation at face value that it was 4-2-1. It doesn't affect my decision, so I don't need to see that, but. Okay, so I think we're ready to make this appointment. It's unusual because we don't usually have a split vote from the actual committee. So
Do we have a minority report? According to the chair, one member decided to make a minority report without the.
It's included in your packet.
Yeah.
We provided that last week.
And
It is provided in here?
it is
Yes.
provided, and he did include all of the committee members on there as well.
On this packet, Commissioner. It's third page. Oh, no, yeah, right there's my note. So the advisory committee is recommending Mr. Shorno for you to consider for the appointment as a farmer. In the minority report, it states, I believe, so it was between Ms. Mercy McGee and Mr. Glenn Shorno, I believe, between the two.
all right, well, I guess we just go down the line here. Commissioner Mejia, you're up first.
I am inclined to go with Mr. Mercy Kariuki McGee.
Shorno.
All right. I'm gonna select Ms. McGee. This board has made I respect the position of the Agriculture Advisory Committee, but they were divided among themselves, either 5-4 or 4-2-1. What was mentioned here about several forms of much needed diversity to the committee. I think these committees need to be as wide ranging in the community as possible. This board has made commitments that the Agriculture Advisory Committee doesn't have regarding trying to diversify representation on our committees. When I spoke to the Longview Kiwanis last week, the week before, whatever, one of the questions I got in the Q&A section was, what steps is this board going to take to try to realize some of the things we have in our resolution on the racial equity resolution, and how is the board going to, and they specifically mentioned our advisory boards and committees. So this is how you do it. Doesn't mean you put unqualified people in the position or inappropriate, but that's not the case here. Clearly, as the result of this vetting came out. There's also an issue. My work on the Climate Action Steering Committee. We're looking for folks that are involved with regenerative agriculture. So that's another element that SDG is getting involved in, and I think will be great. And then we're constantly hearing about how to appeal to youth and bringing young people into farming in Thurston County. And that's another area she's got a couple of committee involvement in. So I think that's the good selection for this committee at this time. Commissioner Ian.
I just, this is nothing. I saw the, both of them speak at the Agriculture Advisory Committee. I went back and looked at the video later. I feel like Mr. Shorter brings great experience to the table, but I agree with what Commissioner Menser said, but I think she brings more than just a racial diversity to the committee. She also brings the viewpoint as a micro farmer that we haven't had before, and I feel that insight is, really meaningful, especially as we're looking to bring, new farmers in, and that's been one of the main complaints that I've heard is, how do we bring new farmers in? How do we incentivize? And this might just be a way, and that perspective might be needed. And she's also, really involved with GRAB and providing that food protection to the low-income population in Thurston County, which is also very, very much needed. So I think she would bring just a different kind of a taste to the advisory committee, a different kind of farming. I think a micro farmer, we don't have one at this time, and that would be honestly just definitely kind of a new outlook to the community.
Sure.
Yes. If you compare the resumes of both of those being considered today, and say you want to encourage young people, I can tell you that Mr. Sharno has been active in the FFA program for as many years as I've known him. Actually a graduate of the FFA program, a graduate of WSU in the farming program. He's made his living as a farmer, and he's actively farming right now in a large-scale farm. So it looks like the board is interested in diversity, and that's fine. But I think we really need the voice of someone that is really real agriculture, and that's what he makes his living in. So my question would be, is there any reason that we just couldn't appoint both of them? If you're looking for diversity and you're looking for knowledge, I don't know that we have a set rule that says we can only have X numbers. So why not put them both on there?
Is there well, let's just answer the question looking at Amy. do we have, every board is different and I can never keep them straight. Do we have a set number by our code that has to be, that we have to change, or does it have that flexibility that Commissioner Evans suggests?
There is the flexibility, excuse me, but at this moment, let's see. The seats for the committee stand as 7 farmers, 4 non-farmers, and 2 ex officio.
That's based on what authority?
It's based off of the 1978 Citizens Report. So this committee,
It's codified in the county code.
it is, yes. So it can be changed by ordinance.
So not just, we'd have to make that additional step. This is what it sounds like.
Yeah.
You can't just add somebody in.
I believe so.
Because I mean, I'm personally open to that thought. I see where you're going with that. Because I'm not against Mr. Shorno in any way, so it's really about trying to.
Well, I hear the county manager often say that we're allowed to revise issues that other boards have done. And in 1978, I'd say there's been quite a change since then. So.
I would actually not be in favor of adding more members to a committee that's, I feel, already struggling. And it's like, how many, I think it was the same thing that we had on the treatment cells tax planning commission, when we were like, well, you know, we had all these great applicants, and it was like, well, can we add and make it bigger? And Carrie was the one who was like, preferably not, because it gets hard to manage a bigger committee. And that's, I feel, kind of the same thing here. I feel if we just keep adding members to them, I feel it just kind of waters down. They're harder to manage. They're harder for schedules to line up. And, you know, this is nothing against Mr. Shorner. I was really impressed with him at the advisory committee. But I just, at this time, I just felt that Mercy was kind of like that little extra move that we needed in the advisory committee at this time. I just don't think increasing the number, if that would really meet the end goal of what we're trying to do, especially as, you know, we don't have even the guidelines set yet, and would there be, I mean, anything that would really accomplish us adding more members to any of the advisory committees at this time?
How long are the terms?
2 years, and some stagger.
That's right. I mean, see,
All 2 years.
that factors into my thinking, because if it's like, some of the boards are like 6-year terms,
Yeah.
and somebody wouldn't get a chance. Mr. Mankemeyer has come up twice during the time that I've been on this committee, so just using his as an example, because I know he came up twice, right? 2019 and now 2021. So there should be multiple opportunities. That means that out of 11 members and people's terms are 2 years, that means you're going to have a slate of people every year.
Right. There are a couple of vacancies coming up this year,
Yeah, so
or reappointments. So.
given that, I say we keep Mr. Shorno's application on the top of the pile, and he'll be a good, assuming he's still interested, he'll be a good person to consider for the next vacancy.
We will keep his application on file.
Well, sounds like you have direction on that one.
Great, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. I will include the appointment on next week's agenda.
Thank you. All right. PIO check-in, item 7.
Good morning, Commissioners. Megan Porter, Public Information Supervisor. Last week was mostly responding to the fireworks ban, and so that kept us pretty busy. Since this was the first time the county enacted that ban, we have a lot of lessons learned. So I'm holding an after action with Fire Marshal and Emergency Services this week. So we can kind of put some lessons learned down, because I think we could have done it a little bit better, at least the communication part of it. So we will be doing that. And then I got some feedback that it's hard to hear you, so please remember to speak out when you're talking in the room so that the microphones pick you up.
Today, you're getting that feedback?
Yeah, just from one person, so
Okay.
hopefully it's not too bad, but just a reminder. And pending any questions, that's what I have for you today.
Question for Megan?
No.
No, sir.
No, thank you, Megan.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. And that brings us to item 8, which has 2 sub-items. Number 1 is plat alterations request, Walker short plat.
Will you consider a minute break, Commissioner?
Oh. Early break?
Yeah.
Okay, you got it.
Thank you.
We'll be back at 10:10.
You're welcome.
All right, good, welcome back. It's 10:12 a.m. picking up for the Board of County Commissioners agenda setting work session for July 6th. And we left off with item 8, number 1, plat alterations request, Walker Short plat. We've had a couple of discussions about this, and I see that we have the chair of our planning commission on the Zoom. We have Jennifer Davis, who's also involved in
That's for the next item, for the
well, that's wireless code?
Yeah.
Sorry, guys,
So
I got confused.
we'll get.
Sorry, Jim, we'll get to you. You're next up. All right, this one, Brett Burris, who am I looking for guidance to lead us through? I forgot where we left off.
Yeah, we left off, Commissioners, there's, you may remember 2 requests for short plat alterations. The one you already approved 3 weeks ago, and you continue the conversation with this particular request from Mr. Walker. And he's present with us today as you requested last week, because you wanted to hear his perspective related to this particular request. This is located within the Olympia UGA. In the Tract A, which Mr. Walker is requesting for you to change the alteration, is related to the density in which this plat was approved from the beginning. And it's related to the density within the Olympia UGA, as well as the sewer accessibility, which the City of Olympia is the one who provides the services in this location. A few nuances we provided to you. I read an email Mr. Walker submitted a couple of weeks ago. And as a result of that email, you requested for me to ask him and for you to hear directly from Mr. Walker. Before we do that, perhaps Brad and Don can add additional comments to this request.
Thank you, Brett Burris with Community Planning and Economic Development. Thank you for that summary. Unfortunately, as we reviewed the plat alteration, and through its review, environmental health had concerns regarding the plat alteration as well as community planning and economic development. As discussed in the 2 previous conversations that we've had with the board, by developing the Tract A, unfortunately does not meet the density requirements of the underlying zoning, which is residential 4 to 8 units per acre. In addition to that, I will now pass it over to Dawn for a response from environmental health.
Good morning, Dawn Peebles, Senior Environmental Specialist, Public Health and Social Services Department, Environmental Health Division. As you recall, the 3-lot subdivision was completed as an exception to the rule because there were 2 existing homes that they were wanting to put on 2 individual lots. So in order for the subdivision to go through and meet density requirements, they allowed Tract A to be formed that would further be developed in the future in order to fulfill the requirements of density. The sanitary code does require the county to follow the city's wastewater management plan. And the City of Olympia has recommended denial and said that the proposal in front of us does not meet their wastewater management plan, and therefore environmental health has recommended denial of the plat alteration as well.
And so can you follow up on the interactions that you had with the City of Olympia related to Mr. Walker's proposal and the specific request of building a single unit with a septic tank? Knowing that, and knowing that perhaps later on when sewer will be available, then there will be the ability to meet the density of the City of Olympia. I think it was a little bit of interaction on that.
Yes, the city did provide comment initially on the application. I did reach out to the City of Olympia again last week just to confirm their stance. And they did state that because sewer is not available, they would continue to recommend denial. They have had other developments similar to this that wanted to take a phased approach, but they said in those situations, they were able to meet the city sewer requirements and, you know, build the utility infrastructure.
Okay, so I don't recall the exact question for Mr. Walker, and thanks for being here.
Sure.
My question last week was just, do we have a path forward? I mean, not, even assuming that, we wanted to, and there's a bigger question, I guess, but I just wasn't getting a sense that there was a path forward because, as you said, I think Commissioner Edwards had an idea or two about maybe a way through county code, but then we'd be subject to the city. I'm looking at Dawn because I think you were the one that was describing that the city would still have the ability to cut off the path forward that we tried to create if we did try to create one. And so that left me feeling last week like, well, our hands may be tied here.
Well, yes, sir, and the city would have to sign off on any septic system permit application that comes through the county. Again, there is an administrative process for any applicant to go through if, they're grieved by our decision or stance. But without the city sign off on that septic application, the county would not process or issue a permit for a septic.
Okay, board, you want to make some initial comments to all this?
I want to build one house on a 1.1 acre lot.
For the
right?
record, can you introduce yourself?
I'm John Walker. I'm the owner of the parcel that I submitted the plat alteration request for. So I want to build one house with one septic system because there's no sewer available out there right now, right? And I submitted a future development plan. I don't want to alter the tract right now and split it up into 9 lots. But I submitted a plan that shows in the future, when sewer is available, I could do that and then build it out and meet the density requirements, right? So the future plat I submitted, I would build a house on a narrow lot in the middle of the plat, right? And then there'd be room to add 8 additional lots later, right? When sewer is available. So it's one septic system on 1.1 acres, right? In the Olympia urban growth area. So if you look at the city's wastewater management plan, right, it says, the city can make the decision, whether or not to allow a septic system on a parcel. And it says there's a flow chart, see Appendix P in the wastewater management plan, follow this flow chart, that's how the city makes the decision. So I got the flow chart and, it's like, is the property greater than 200 feet from an existing gravity sewer? So there's no sewer out there, so yes, right? So then you go, is it next to a steps, abutting any street with a step main? No, right? Is a property within city limits? No, right? It's in the Olympia urban growth area. So then it's, permitted, right, from the city. So I don't understand it's a 1.1 acre lot. I'm not trying to put 9 septic systems out there. I'm trying to put one. So to me, the city should approve my septic system, right, if I request it. And I'm able to build a septic system on there by removing the restriction from the plat, right? So that's the whole reason for doing this plat alteration. And this is something I came in March of 2017. I did the pre-submission conference. The direction I got from the planner was to go through this process, do a plat alteration. And I've been trying to go through that, for years. So, I came up with the plat that shows I can meet the future density when sewer is available. But now it seems like, for some reason, it seems like the city is stuck on, they must think I'm trying to put 9 septic systems out there, because otherwise I don't see how I don't meet their flow chart for approving a new septic system. I mean, there's a lot being developed just north of me, and they're putting a septic system on there, right? I called the city last week, and the person I talked to is like, well, we have this flow chart, and just from what you're telling me, it looks like you're permitted, right? So I requested a copy of the flow chart. It should be permitted. So I don't understand what we're stuck on and why it's taken so long, but it seems to me like it's just the communication between maybe the county and the city. Maybe the city thinks something we don't. I got an email from Tiffany King, she's like, this is February of 2020, and it says, Chapter 1308 of the Olympia Municipal Code speaks to sewer regulations in place. Without the condition on the plat, your parcel would likely meet the requirements for a septic system, but it is a note on the plat that is limiting. So that note on the plat is what I'm going through the whole plat alteration for, Because like I said, it's like a 1 acre lot in the middle of an established neighborhood with a bunch of 1 acre lots around it. The whole area is on septic. So, I mean, that's what started the whole process, right? I mean, it doesn't. So, I mean, that's where I'm at.
Don, do you have can you remind me what the concern was? I mean, environmental health recommendation was denial. Can you elaborate on that?
And environmental health's recommendation was denial based on the city's recommendation of denial also, because the sanitary code requires us to follow the city's
Okay, it was just
wastewater
that.
management plan.
There's nothing like intrinsic to the septic's plan and that would cause your concern?
No, it's based on the wastewater plans. And as Tiffany mentioned in her email, it was the condition of the plat that is the limiting factor.
Okay. Commissioner Edwards, go ahead.
I guess I find that oftentimes government doesn't allow for common sense issues to be addressed properly. So because of that, if Mr. Walker is willing to go forward with the city of Olympia, I'm all for giving him a break. And 1 septic on an acre does not seem excessive. And I think that's what we're here for, is to try and help citizens solve problems. And there is going to be a dollar difference on the value of an empty lot versus a developed lot that's going to benefit either the city or the county in the tax rolls. So I think from the presentation Mr. Walker gave, reading from the city information, I think he's at the mercy of the city bureaucrats, but apparently their own material says that he could get it if we'd scratch something off the plat. So I'm all for scratching it off and moving forward.
What's the process going forward if we were to say, okay, yes to this?
For the plat itself, Mr. Walker would have to submit a revised plat that would show the amendment if it did move forward, and it would have to be recorded downstairs.
The action that we are being asked to take is to take this condition out of the plat. And I guess my question is, what collaboration is involved with the city of Olympia on that? I mean, are we, so by us taking that action, are we violating some sort of like a gentleman's agreement or commitment we have that they, I mean, the origin of this was, they were involved, right, in the origin of this language, and it's too small for my eyes, so I don't have my reading glasses. I think it's number, thank you, Commissioner. I think it's number 4 we keep talking about.
I also have it on the face of the memo.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah. Well, do you understand my question? Like, I mean, is this within our purview and City of Olympia will be fine with that and then they'll take it up? Or are they going to be angry with us because this was a collaboration with them at some point that they, I don't know, is there, I just like to know the extent of the entanglements and the commitments and the collaboration with these, because it relates to our joint planning efforts with them, which is how we do work in the UGA. And I don't want to take this action and then realize there were consequences that I wasn't aware of to our action.
Well, anytime a subdivision is submitted in a UGA, coordination with that city is required.
Yeah, then that's in our joint plan.
Right, and then they provide comments back that benefit the joint plans and the requirements of both the city's requirements, and then the county staff does theirs for the county.
So us scratching out 4 and then and then it'll follow with it. I mean, will that be like, oh, okay, well, here's our comments on, I mean, will that be a normal process or will that be an unusual and objectionable step that the county commissioners just took vis-a-vis the city?
I think that's an excellent question. first off, the plat alteration process in its entirety is confusing and cumbersome. We are here before the Board of County Commissioners to review a plat alteration regarding a note. I do not know, and I cannot speak on what the reaction from the City of Olympia would be. All we have is their recommendation based off environmental health to recommend denial of the plat alteration.
But if we did this, they would still have, and they don't feel it's appropriate for their management plan or whatever, they read the flow chart different or whatever, they would still have that prerogative to deny the septic plan and defend it to Mr. Walker on their, I mean, we're not forcing them into something they don't want to do is just what I'm asking. We're creating a pathway that then Olympia can then take or not take. Is that accurate? I mean, I'm just trying to understand the parameters of the decision before us.
I'm gonna let Don speak to a portion of that, but as it was stated, the application is required to be approved for septic by the City of Olympia. So if you were to approve the removal of this condition, Mr. Walker would then proceed forward to the City of Olympia. And that's where we would rely on the City of Olympia to provide us guidance based off the joint plan. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm in your world at this point.
Because our code requires that we have their approval.
Correct, and again, if, depending on what their response to that specific application would be, there is an administrative process to go through, requesting a waiver from our code for that portion. But removing the condition itself does allow Mr. Walker to take the next step.
But is it your sense that this number 4, this plat language is not the only thing guiding Olympia's decision? It sounds like their interpretation of their own wastewater plan.
What else could there be though? I mean, don't they have to follow the process? If you go to them with a 1 acre lot and, you follow the flow chart.
Well, I don't know I don't know the details of their plan and how they, go. Some cities, I know cities are trying to get rid of septics in urban growth areas. I mean, and I'm sure they've got a strategy. I know they've got a strategy designed to do that, and I don't know what the details of that are, but yeah, you might be right.
Yeah, I mean, in the same email I got from Tiffany, it says Thurston County is the decision-making authority on a change to the plat. So that's what we're trying to do here, right? And then the city is providing a recommendation and not be amended as proposed. So not sure what her deal was there, but probably based on.
Can you read that again?
So
the second part.
So Thurston County is the decision-making authority on a change to plat. The city is providing them a recommendation, which is that it not be amended as proposed. So, but it's.
Well, my concern is that and I'll go to county manager, but I understand, not fully, but I mean, conceptually, I understand why you have these types of rules, and a lot of times there's good reason for them. What I don't want to see is that we're in some kind of weird catch-22 where people are pointing at other people's, I don't want you to get caught between just two bureaucracies that aren't coordinated. That's not acceptable to me. So that if I feel like that's what's happening, then I'm definitely willing to step on a limb, but I'm just trying to feel that out. Go ahead, County Manager.
This is certainly a conundrum for the board in a way. When this plan was submitted, we followed the joint planning agreements that we have with all the cities within the UGA. And as a result of that, the City of Olympia recommended putting those restrictions on the face of the plan. Fast forward to today, and again, that conundrum seems interesting because Mr. Walker obviously has a good argument to make that he would like to build a property a house in this property, knowing that perhaps he has a commitment to meet the density when the sewer line comes in. But also, due to the joint plan agreement, if the board approves Mr. Walker's recommendation, there is also a risk because that may fall hollow or short of what Mr. Walker's plans are, because the City of Olympia may not, however they read that, I don't think we're here to have a conversation as to how the City of Olympia implements their code. That's outside of the conversation. And then if the board approves this request, Mr. Walker perhaps is gonna be in the same situation that he is right now. He will not be able to implement or build this house with a septic system. Perhaps there is an administrative waiver that we can exercise. But at what point, the value of having the joint agreements with the cities within the UGA will play a role in this. And that comes back to you in terms of policy. You as a policy, how you like to implement any particular decisions related to specific requests. So I will encourage you to look from that point of view, if I may, as to what is the policy that you like to implement on this?
Commissioner Edwards?
I guess I'm leaving this up to Mr. Walker to make an interpretation on whether or not he can proceed with the city. I'm interested in housing, affordable housing, attainable housing. I don't know where this all fits, but we'll never have attainable housing for individuals if we don't try to start making it easier for individuals to build homes. And this is just one little baby step in that direction.
And I'm all for moving forward with the city.
And he's taking a chance of moving forward.
Yeah.
Is there
a pretty good position there?
I don't, not knowing is the joint plans and how they work and what kind of collaboration happens, is there value to, if this is seen, in case this is seen to be an unusual step, if the board were to do this, could we send the city a letter, like a short letter, kind of explaining that we're creating this pathway. We understand the city of Olympia is going to evaluate the needs of, under our plan. But I don't know, just to sort of make sure, I'm not trying to start war with the city of Olympia over this. If this is not how we usually do our joint plan, we're trying to improve those processes to try to foster development. I've been pushing hard to work toward getting those joint plans up to date. And we're talking about our pilot project in Lacey and all this stuff. So I'm trying to make these things work better. And I certainly don't want to create distrust, because I feel like we've been trying to iron out distrust between cities and county. And I think that serves the citizens if we're working well. So I'm just wondering how we can maybe do this and let the city know that we're not trying to start a war or upend the principles under our joint planning processes, but this is a confusing situation and we'd like them to sort of tangle with it based on their septic or their management plans, rather than the county creating an additional hurdle. I don't know, would that make any sense, or is that just a meaningless step from your perspective?
Well, Commissioner, obviously, you can write a letter on behalf of the commission at any time. But please note, whatever direction you guys choose, staff will be coordinating with the city of Olympia, letting them know what the decision was.
Commissioner?
I think this falls within the intention of the Growth Management Act, because they're talking about trying to consolidate the population in the urban core. This does everything towards that goal. By not approving this, it actually is contrary to the Growth Management Act's intent. So that's why, I mean, yes, it's a goof up, if you will. I don't know the proper terminology. You're pretty eloquent at describing that. But I do think that we're in a situation where it's a technical bureaucratic process. If the city puts sewer out there, then the density can continue to increase. There'll be hookup fees and all that type of thing that are gonna come to play here. And the intent of growth management will be met. If we deny it, I think we're contrary to the intent of Growth Management Act. So either, what are we? Is it the chicken and the egg, or the egg and the chicken, or whatever? That's why I'm willing to go forward and let Mr. Walker figure it out.
I mean, yeah, it's a difficult situation that we're in. And I mean, just hearing from Mr. Walker at this time and not knowing, you know, kind of what the response from the city of Olympia is at this time, I'm inclined to grant Mr. Walker's request and, you know, have him move on to the next step, which would be with the city of Olympia.
Is that gonna cause any issues from your guys' perspective that we haven't talked about already?
We serve the Board of County Commissioners, whatever direction you guys choose.
I get that, but you know, I wanna make sure I don't wanna not understand. There's layers here that I just wanna make sure that I understand the consequences of the decisions that I or we make.
Is there a layer that we haven't discussed here?
Maybe if the board considers granting this request, I'll touch base with Jay Burney, just to give him additional perspective if this issue arises to a level of concern.
All right, well, it sounds like you have a preliminary 3 thumbs to do that, am I right?
What do you mean preliminary? Because if you approve this request, we're moving forward.
Yeah.
Mr. Walker submits the request and then we sign the plat.
Well, there's another action to be taken, right? We're not signing anything this morning.
No, Mr. Walker would prepare the final plat map and bring it before.
Right, so subject to you, what I'm hearing is subject to you coming back and saying, hold the presses, Jay Burney says A, B, and C that we didn't talk about, we're agreeing to do it.
Oh, I was suggesting.
Or do you want us
that-
to wait for a week or?
No, I was suggesting for you to go ahead and grant, and then I will give Jay Burney
That letter that you talked about.
the heads up as to what the issue is, if in case he hears about this. I wasn't suggesting for you to wait until I get in touch with Jay. So it was a little bit different, Mike.
Okay, well, that's why I said preliminary, because it just, so that it's clear that if there was some element of this that I'm not seeing, I reserve the right to change my position before we get to but we should be moving forward, because it's gonna take some time
Right.
to get to the finish line, right?
For the plat amendment?
Yes, for the plat amendment.
However long it takes his consultant to draft it.
Well, I'll go find somebody.
All right, good luck, Mr. Walker.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walker.
Okay. Then we get to item 8.2, wireless code, citizens advisory group, and this is where we've got planning commission input that was requested by the board. Ramiro and Jennifer.
Yeah, this is a follow-up to the briefing that you had a couple of weeks ago. And this is related to the wireless code that we're moving forward. And Mr. Ken Feldman, that is the consultant the county hired to guidance through the federal regulations that really applies to the wireless code. There has been a lot of conversations at the planning commission from the citizens providing a great perspective. You heard from Mr. Ken Feldman that is, and he's a renowned expert in the nation related to all the different requirements here on the new FCC regulations. And even, forming the citizens group, what will be the expectations of the citizen group provided feedback, considering that perhaps it will be very narrow as to how we can influence the changes on the federal regulations. So through the conversation, you ask the planning commissioner chair, which is right here, good to see you, Jen, to give you a perspective as to where was the rationale as to when they submitted this request for you to consider to form this citizen advisory group. And I believe Jen can give you a perspective on that. But before then, Jennifer, you'd like to add anything else?
No,
Thanks. Just a couple other things for context. Jennifer Davis, Community Planning Manager. Where we are in this update is that the Planning Commission did hold a public hearing on a draft code update. It was during their deliberations after that public hearing that they had heard from some members of the community that they wanted to form a citizens committee. And so the Planning Commission took that into consideration. And since that wasn't currently part of the scope of work, wrote a recommendation to the board to consider forming that committee. The track that this amendment is on right now is that the staff is working through many of the comments received during the public hearing, including from, concerned citizens, wireless companies, the whole gamut, and are prepared to go back to the Planning Commission for a couple of work sessions, I would anticipate, in August. So the Planning Commission has not made their final recommendation on this. They are recommending looking into forming a citizens committee, and that's what we're talking about today.
Okay, do the board want to ask Jim questions, or Jim, do you want to just kind of give a kind of an introductory overview of what the Planning Commission's thought process was from your perspective?
Absolutely. Jim Simmons, thank you for this couple minutes that you guys will give us. I think what we were hearing as a Planning Commission was the scope of this update was huge. It affects the whole county. And we were hearing concerns ranging from health to, aesthetics to where these poles or how it was going to be placed. So there was a large concern what was going on. I think why we are recommending the advisory committee is because I believe that the public they feel like they're not being heard. They're coming in after the fact. Staff has done a great job and continues to do a great job preparing for this, but the scope of this is just so large that we believe that with citizen involvement that you're going to get a more collaborative ending, a better outcome that's going to be cooperative. And we felt that was very important. And everybody that pretty much commented to us in public comment periods all mentioned the need for some type of advisory committee with citizen involvement. So it just seemed, it isn't important to us to have that kind of collaboration.
Okay, thanks. Questions from the board? Go ahead, Commissioner Edwards.
I don't know as much as I have a question. Maybe Jim could answer what the Planning Commission would feel about this. I guess in talking with some of the folks on this proposal for a citizens advisory group, why couldn't we have staff put together a proposal that they feel would meet all the legal requirements from the FCC, that apparently is the regulatory body, and then have an advisory committee review that and make recommendations to us that staff obviously would be able to overlook those recommendations and advise us, well, this section that we're being proposed is contrary to the law, that won't work. And this section is okay with the law, that would fit. So let's make that amendment. What would be wrong with that citizen group reviewing a proposal that we plan on putting into ordinance? And I guess this has been hanging fire for about 8 years, I'm told. Is that right? Is that right, Jennifer? That this thing has kind of been, hanging around and nobody's done anything on it until this point. I'm not being critical. I'm just saying it's been there a long time.
It's been on the docket since I believe 2014, but the federal rules have continued to change over the last
That makes
few
it kind
years.
of hard to put together something.
I think we figure out we've landed on a place where it's definitely time to play. I mean, we get applications in the door for wireless facilities. I think we have one now, and without our code being up to date, it's difficult to navigate that, frankly, because we still have to comply with the federal rules. Where we are, though, is that we have done what you're suggesting, Commissioner Edwards. We do have a draft that folks can respond to. That was the public hearing draft that was prepared by staff and the consultant that went to public hearing on June 2nd, and that we have a bunch of public comments in on that staff is working through. So that's kind of the normal legislative process. To form a citizens committee, if that's the direction you'd want to go, it would be that same draft that we would be taking forward to the citizens committee for their almost like an additional public input period where they had some additional time basically to look at what has been put together and suggest changes.
I guess.
Can I just, excuse me. I just say that what Jennifer says is very true. We're moving along in this process. What I feel that the citizens are missing is being a part of that process. They feel like when they come in at the end, when everything is already put in front of them, I feel that they are feeling left out and getting to that point. You're very, very right. When we get to that point, I have a belief that they believe that it's kind of decided and we're there. They want to be part of the process to get to where you're talking about, Commissioner.
Okay, I guess my follow-up would be, here we're asking the citizens to accept whatever we, staff, whatever the county does on this proposal, even though the rules have been changed sometimes over the 8 years. And we give them about 3 minutes to comment on something that we may or may not make changes to. So I guess I'm in favor of allowing the citizens to have some say in how this proceeds. And I'm gonna go back to my comment that I have had discussions with members of this organization that feel they have something to add that is not necessarily contrary to what the proposal by staff has been. It's just that they think there's a few other little tweaks that could be put in there that would not be prohibitively regulatory, because I'm never in favor of crazy regulation that's gonna stop something, but something that's got a balanced approach to keep a pole from being placed right in front of somebody's house with a big box on it, and that's their only view of the mountain or whatever. You know, that, no, you can't put it right there. You have to have it, 10 feet to the right or the left. I don't know how it's gonna work out, but I do think it's beneficial and we end up with a better product anytime the citizens are allowed to participate in one fashion or another. And 3 minutes is not valid participation in most cases, in my estimation.
It's 4 minutes now, Commissioner.
So four in front of us, but 3 in front of other bodies.
I did have a question in regards to, if we were to have the Citizens Advisory Group, would Mr. Feldman be participating in those as our consultant?
I think that's a great question for the board. Mr. Feldman is paid for by a contract through the prosecuting attorney's office, and we have a couple representatives on the line from them today, but it's not currently within his contract to facilitate a citizens group, so that would need to be an amendment. I do think that facilitation of this group, if that's the way to go, would be helpful and useful, unless it's simply a matter of turning over the current draft to an existing standing group to give them some additional time for specific input. There's different ways to slice this, but I think additional facilitation services for something that has some very specific legal sideboards could be helpful. And it might also be helpful to form more of a stakeholder group that included both citizens and members of the wireless facility provider community who also have comments on this current draft. So that would be a more kind of a holistic approach, much like we would normally do with the planning project and long range planning. But facilitation will be important for that. So the question is whether the county wants to pay for those services, whether Mr. Feldman is available for those services. He can't be on the phone today, was invited, but I believe he is on vacation right now. So it's something that we could put a proposal together about.
Robin, do you have something?
Just would like to hear from Elizabeth on the appropriateness of having an attorney who advises the board be a facilitator for a citizens group and advising that citizens group as well.
Elizabeth, are you there? Travis?
Cost aside, because it will be expensive.
Travis is there.
Go ahead, Travis. Did you hear the question?
I think I did, and I'm not sure if Elizabeth is tracking or not, but I think the end of the day, our office advises the county, and whatever advice or consulting that Mr. Fellman provides, we act as a filter, and then ultimately any legal advice is provided on this matter is provided by the prosecuting attorney's office. So, Mr. Fellman can certainly act in a expert sort of non-legal fashion to try to facilitate the conversation. But I would say this is, we want to be somewhat judicious of Mr. Fellman's time, and I don't want to say he shouldn't be involved. We just got an email from Ken here. He never received a calendar invite. That's why he didn't make it. That's too bad. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. I think it's important to get that Mr. Fellman gets involved, that he does hear the concerns and any suggestions that this group may put together. But ultimately, at the end of the day, any legal advice has to come through our office. And I see Elizabeth's online now too. She may have some input.
Anything extra to add to that, Elizabeth?
Yeah, sorry, I was having trouble turning on my video for some reason. No, I agree with what Travis has said. Ultimately, the advice does come from our office unless John appoints the individual as the special deputy prosecuting attorney.
Which he has done, I believe.
In this case?
I thought that he had done that when we contracted with Mr. Feldman.
I am not sure about that.
We'll check on that.
Well,
Okay.
Because he has been advising our board on more than just this.
Travis, are you saying that, you didn't say this directly, but I feel like the implication of what you were saying is that we wouldn't need Mr. Fellman to be shepherding a citizens group? You could do that, or somebody, prosecuting attorney would be a better, because you're really the directly, or no, or is that not true because you're more giving direct legal advice to the
Mr.
commissioners?
Feldman is the expert in this area. So that is the whole reason that we contract with him.
So you're saying there's no choice but to have him involved in this? My concern, I did listen to 2 of the sessions when the Planning Commission heard this matter. My concern is that I clearly heard Mr. Feldman's opinion that some of the proposals from the citizens were not in accordance with federal rules and laws, and that our prosecutors, with all due respect, do not have the expertise in this area to guide a citizens committee on whether or not their concepts are legal in accordance with the federal laws. However, I do have some concern. Can Mr. Feldman advise a citizens committee and the board at the same time if there's any threat of a legal action?
And I guess that's probably my a little bit of concern that I have in going back to what Jim stated. Perhaps the citizens, they have not been involved or they have not been heard. And if the board, agrees on forming this advisory committee, I think it will be helpful to put some what I call sideboards and understandings. Because what will be the purpose of having an advisory board to provide recommendations to a code that is going to be in violations of the federal law? And that is going to be, with all due respect, a waste of time from everybody involved within the process. regardless whether they're involved in they're being heard or not. So at some point, they're gonna go down this route and we're gonna get a legal advice. There's no, you cannot implement this in the code because we're in violations of the federal law. We'll be in a much worse situation related to what the perception is of the citizens. They have not been heard. So, and that is really difficult. And Robin and I have been involved in this wireless issue with Mr. Feldman for 4 years, if not more.
For 10 years.
They were, we have participated at national level on challenging the new regulations by the FCC. It's not just Thurston County, it's many jurisdictions across the nation who have appealed those decisions with no avail. Really, it is very difficult. We're dealing with federal law and the restrictions are such that having an advisory committee, building that expectation, they will have feedback. That's difficult for me to understand and go by. And I understand what Jim has stated in terms of, public participation. But in this case, a little bit different because the restrictions are federal law. So.
Commissioner Edwards.
I guess I would not expect any group to make a proposal that was illegal. I think that's where this discussion is beneficial for this group to hear, well, your proposal A won't work because it violates federal law. B looks like that'll fit. And I don't see what the problem would be to allow that citizen input. We're talking about a major adjustment, national structure that allows this type of correspondence or business or whatever you want to talk about. I mean, they're talking about upgrading the grid, so to speak, to allow people to have more access. And I suppose for that reason, the feds have changed the rules maybe. But I don't think I'm not asking that group to make a proposal that doesn't fit within the guidelines of the federal law. I'm just saying if they've got an idea that will fit and it makes sense and it makes it better for the citizens of Thurston County, why not give them an opportunity to speak their piece rather than a 3-minute, presentation?
Sorry. Mr. Feldman is.
We have this.
Yeah, he promised he was gonna be on a vacation.
Well, he looks like he's on vacation.
Thank you for joining us, Ken. But just what Commissioner Edwards stated, I believe, not formally, but some of that interaction has occurred in terms of some of the feedback the citizens have provided. And I believe Mr. Feldman has provided a little bit of a sideboards as to why those cannot occur. And that is where the deviation occurs because they have a different perspective, I believe, as to what the federal law will be.
Ken, just since you're jumping in here, we're debating the proposal from our planning commission to have a citizen advisory committee weigh in a little bit on some of we understand that I heard from your presentation, there are elements that are kind of set in law. There are some that are a little grayer and there are some where there is some flexibility and so we're wondering, is there enough flexibility or decisions to be made that a citizen advisory committee would be useful and productive? And then what your role, there's been some discussion of what your role would be if we were to do that. Would it be appropriate or could we bring you on board to help with that and how would that look? So that's kind of what we're just kind of kicking around. And we've got the chair of our planning commission here to kind of explain where they were coming from in their recommendation. And a couple of our prosecuting attorneys. So that's where we're at.
Okay, well, thanks for bringing me up to date. I'm sorry I'm a little late. It was my fault for not getting the right time in my calendar.
Anyone want to direct a question to Ken?
No, I just want a little citizen involvement is all I want. And I don't want to do something illegal. And the county manager said some of that process maybe has already been followed. But it sounds to me like Jim is telling us that the planning commission heard from members of this community. And they maybe did not feel that they were heard. I don't know what that breaks down to. Jim, do you have anything to add with where I'm going with this?
I agree with what you're saying. I think the people, first of all, I believe that the people that would be involved in this are smart to understand if they were told that this is illegal, they're not going to follow through. It continually comes back to me that they feel like they're not being heard. And that's becoming more and more of a thing at our meetings. And so if it's possible to have this committee, I think that we would become more collaborative. We would be working together. I believe that they would, that's what it seems like people right now are craving, just to be a part of, rather than feel like they're working from the outside and not getting heard. And to me, they're not, you know, they can write a letter, but are they getting responses to that? Sometimes I think they do, sometimes they don't. So we just feel as a commission that it's important for this group to be heard.
We do have about 60 or 70 written comments that staff, like I said, we're still in the middle of the process. So the responses will come in the form of additional work sessions with the Planning Commission. With or without a citizens committee, that process will continue where responses to those comments will be brought to the Planning Commission to talk about, okay, is this suggestion, can we do this, not do this, here's why, let's move, you know, what changes do we need to make to the draft? So it's still very much in that drafting and legislative review process, and we haven't responded yet to all of those 60 comments that we've received. That's still to come.
Travis, I saw your hand.
Yeah, I might add, just as a point of process, trying to unpack this a little bit, what Jennifer is describing now is what the current plan, which is to collaborate, pull all of those comments together, provides, you know, engage Ken so he can respond to see, A, if we have discretion to follow forward, or B, if there's an option. And I'll say, if there is a comment that we receive from the public where there is a potential legal option, those would then advance to you all. And again, we recognize the board ultimately is going to be making the call. And if there's areas where there is discretion, I think it's really staff and your attorney's job to be able to facilitate that conversation. I think this is a lot like some of the more complicated comp plan amendments we've had in the past, where we said, hey, here's a recommendation for the Planning Commission. Here are 3 options. They all have a variety of risk involved, and you know, they involve different levels of discretion. So at the end of the day, I think it's important for that you do get as much public input so that we can provide a full scope review and options when this does in fact get to you to make a decision. So as it stands now, the plan was to have staff review all those comments and then work with Ken in order to develop a systematic sort of package of possible options that you all may be able to take legislatively. And I think what we're discussing today is whether the Planning Commission needs more time to comment. We already, as Jennifer mentioned, we did receive a large number, a healthy amount of comments that we're going to, go through systematically. If the board feels like that, and Mr. Simmons is saying, hey, we need more time, we may even want to, make some drafting suggestions for the consideration of the board and for our consultant to look at. I think that's within your purview to adjust that time. But ultimately, I just want you all to be aware that it's not the Planning Commission that's going to solve or make a final recommendation. That's going to, my sense is this is complicated enough. Ken may be coming back to you all with our team to describe, okay, here are the distinct areas where you may have some options to take. And that's, I think, essentially what we're trying to flesh out as we go through the Planning Commission process. So really today, to me, it's a question of whether the Planning Commission needs more time or whether or not, the board is ready to allow staff to evaluate the comments we've gotten thus far. That's as a matter of process. I think that's what it ultimately comes down to.
Is there a time frame? I guess that's what I thought we were up against, some kind of a time frame.
Well, I would say this, that if you do decide to go with allow the planning commission to evaluate a little further, create an advisory, a secondary advisory round where they would collect folks, and you do have some sideboards. And one of them, I think, time is important. Having been involved in a number of drafting by committee sort of projects at the state legislature and otherwise, these things can take years. If you allow, you're never going to get a full consensus. Rarely, you'll be able to flesh out the positions, you'll be able to flesh out the issues. But if you don't have a time frame, I am concerned that this thing does run out of line. But I don't think that's what the planning commission is asking for, is this endless ability. They just want to be heard more. In which case, I think it'd be reasonable to say, hey, you get X number of months, and then, and have some clear process forward so the citizens and the staff have a way to proceed. The other sideboard, I think, is again, I keep hearing that, we want Mr. Feldman to be able to develop a draft that is legally responsive. And the draft we have today is essentially that. It's what, from Mr. Feldman's work, we've come up with that both meets our code and meets the new federal requirements. And so to the extent that there may be some areas where there's further input, I think that they may be there. They're probably very minor, but there may be some areas where the planning commission may identify it as, hey, this needs to be more lenient, or this needs to be backed off a little bit. But my suggestion is, if we were to move forward, that you do develop a time frame and some sideboards. For example, the conversation may not, the draft should be the starting point, so that we have a systemic way of being able to track this draft legislation as it goes forward. Because a lot of time went into that draft, and that is as good a starting point as we have. Now, planning commission or citizens may want to change sections of that, but I think, those are good sideboards to set along with a time frame that's predictable, and we're able to move forward. And Ken, I should probably let you chime in too here. I apologize if you're a little late, but I think it's important that you give us a little input on where you think this should go.
Yeah, thanks. And I don't want to prejudge anything that may happen or is likely to happen with a citizens committee, but I do think it's important that I at least give you the benefit of my experience in dealing with these kinds of issues. And what I can tell you is, in multiple other communities, there is a group of people who take the position that the county or a municipality has far more authority than what either your county attorney's office or your legal consultant is suggesting that you have. And indeed, in this case, among those 60 plus comments that Travis mentioned, there were some comments saying, but this FCC decision gives the county authority to do X, Y, Z, when in fact it doesn't. And so I'm all for having more public input. I agree that we ought to have a time frame. I want the commissioners to know at the outset, planning commissioners as well, we're not going to get to consensus, and there will be people who will not be happy. And ultimately, when we get to final decision making, the Board of County Commissioners may be getting some direction from staff that says, I think we can only go this far. And you may have citizens saying, oh, no, we think the law means you can go this far. So it's going to be complicated. It's going to be complex. I do think if we take this draft that we have now, we talk about what in the comments that we've seen already we can use to modify the draft further. And then if you do create a committee, I, again, agree with Travis, let's use that as a starting point. Give it to them. If staff, and I would make myself available, I don't want to spend your money for you, but I would be available to attend any of those meetings and engage in discussions with the citizens who have concerns about these issues. And then if they want to make specific recommendations for changes in the draft, then we can evaluate. Staff and I can evaluate them and make a recommendation that we think it's a good idea or a bad idea, and we can explain why. So if we go in that direction, that's the way I see it unfolding. in a way that could be most effective. And I do agree we ought to put a time frame on it. Just to give you a concrete example of what we're up against until we change the code, AT&T has a wireless franchise with Thurston County that is expiring, and it was signed in 2010. In 2010, we didn't have wireless companies that were putting up poles in the rights of way with 5G antennas on them. So any agreement that we write today with AT&T, we have to write to reflect today's reality and to enforce whatever authority the county has to manage the deployment of these facilities. It's far more difficult to do that with a code that doesn't address those issues. So that's an in-process project right now, separate from this code amendment, but it's an example of why it becomes a lot more difficult and challenging for staff to work with these companies that want to do business in the county when we have a code structure that's out of date. So, all that means is let's get to the finish line as quickly as we reasonably can.
Commissioner Mejia.
So with what Ken just said, I like that last proposal he made, but you mentioned a time frame. What is that time frame? How much time do we have? What's the scope of time we have to work in?
Well, if I were to, just come up with a suggestion, it sounds like there's a group of citizens who want to be involved in this. We probably can figure out who they are. I know that I think in one of Jennifer's communications to you, she identified, are we just going to go with the people who have demanded this? Are we going to look for others who might have other views but are still interested in these issues? So depending upon however long it takes to create this committee, my suggestion is if we keep it to a manageable number, somewhere in the 8 to 15 person range. Once you get bigger than that, that's a lot of voices that often say the same thing just in a different way, and it takes a lot more time. But if we keep it, let me say also, I have not spoken to Jennifer or Travis about this, so I'm hoping that none of them are having their blood pressure go through the roof. I'm suggesting that. But if we keep it to that size, if we say, I think we're going to have a draft to them in the not too distant future, and then I don't see why it should take more than 60 days to have that group meet a few times, ask a bunch of questions, and if they want to draft some suggested modifications and discuss them, to me, that ought to be able to be done in 2 months.
Okay, so thanks, Ken. We gotta wrap this item up. We have several other meaty items. I guess where I stand is I agree with having, basically for me, the Planning Commission is the tipping point because they've handled all sorts of difficult issues like mineral land expansions where there was incredible public input and very complicated technical. And if they're saying, and this is the first time I'm seeing them make this time a recommendation, so I think there's something behind that. There's something particularly about this issue that they've heard that suggests to them that this is the right thing. So I'm kind of on the fence before that, but with the Planning Commission's suggestion, I'm leaning toward that. I agree with all the suggestions that Travis and Ken made for timeframes and sideboards. And the size of the committee, that all sounds exactly right from my perspective. So I'm supportive of that myself. Commissioner?
Yeah, my concern is that we don't get a bunch of people on this committee that, no way, we're not doing it, no way, because that's not the way the law is written. The law is written that it's going to happen, and 5G is going to happen. Mm-hmm. And we just have to work within the sideboards the county manager mentioned to have it happen as close to what would meet that input as we could, but legally. So if somebody is, I don't want somebody on that committee that just say, hey, we don't want to do that. That's going to kill us all. We're going to have cancer in a week. That, to me, I don't want that on there. I want some reasonableness on there. And if we could get 7 or 8 people and maybe let staff work with that, I'm good with that. I just don't want radicals from basically either side. The the phone company people or whomever, you know, they're gonna have their point of view. And then no phones ever, we're gonna go back to stringing a tin can, I don't want them on there either. So, see if we can't come up with a balance there. Jennifer, you think you can do that?
I agree with the proposal, especially as Mr. Feldman laid it out. I feel like that sounds very reasonable, especially the timeframes, the size, and just, so, yeah, I'm ready to move forward on it.
Thank you. Just to verbalize the process, just to make sure that we are on the same page on what you are agreeing to move forward. I believe the proposal right now is we currently have over 60 comments. The next step in the process will be to assess all those comments and see where those comments can lead to changes on the current draft proposal. Then the current draft will be available to the Citizens Committee that is going to be involved members of the public as well as members from the industry. And that draft will be presented to them, and it's going to be a 60-day comment period for them to provide comments on the new draft. That's the process that I believe the board agreed to.
Well, are we gonna come up with some type of a recognized group? I guess that's what I'm wondering. Is it possible?
That would be the next step.
Okay, okay, good enough.
When you say
Yeah,
60 days for comments, they're gonna meet and discuss the.
Yeah, that's what the suggestion was, to put the sideboards in terms of the timing. After the new draft is developed based on the feedback of the 60 comments that we have received so far, then the new draft will be available to this group that is going to be formed by citizens as well as the industry. And that group will have 60 days to comment on the new draft. Very serious meetings.
Okay, when you say, but 60 days of comment, but through, as a product of whatever meetings they have or process they
whatever,
use.
and they could probably see if they meet, you know, on a weekly basis, 2-weekly basis, but the 60-day comment period will be part of the sideboards.
I guess.
Is that okay, Jennifer?
Yeah, we can do our best to, I mean, we've heard from a lot of the same people throughout this process. I think we have a fairly good idea of who's very engaged and has a lot of deep thoughts about changes to the draft. We would need some time to update the draft. I think that's wise based on the comments already received. And then we could form hopefully a balanced, it's hard to know sometimes, but hopefully a balanced committee of 7 or 8 citizens that will have meet a few times within a 60-day time period to review. Staff can facilitate that and invite Mr. Feldman to those meetings to help provide perspective. And then we'll be able to bring back the stakeholder recommendations to the Planning Commission, who will then work through those and provide their final recommendation to the board. One possibility is to actually have the Planning Commission involved in helping to select the members of that stakeholder committee, which is something perhaps we could bring to them at a meeting at their next meeting or two.
Jim, does this approach sound like consistent with what the Planning Commission was thinking?
I think it follows very much in line with it. We're just trying to get the people, the public citizens involved, and for them to review the final draft and come up with their ideas, I think is a great way to go.
Okay, appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, looks like we're good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks, Travis. Jennifer.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep. All right.
I was gonna ask Ken if he had a little umbrella on his drink.
I was gonna ask him if he was in jail. See all those bars?
All right, let's go to items, Commissioner items 9-1. It's 11:20. We're at America Rescue Plan Funds Phase 1 United Way follow-up.
Yeah, Commissioners, last week you had a conversation related to the Phase 1 of the first allocation of the American Rescue Plans. It is with the $28 million we have already received. you made some decisions related to the Thurston Strong allocation, which equated just about $9 million. And you set aside another $1 million for you to get additional information related to the farming elements of that program. The next step that I presented to you was the United Way proposal that amounts to $1.5 million. At that point, the board suggested perhaps give another week to address some of the concerns Commissioner Mejia had. And I believe I will follow up with you, Commissioner, and this is the draft that has provided, that I believe addresses your questions. So this is the new proposal from United Way. And let me just read through this because I believe Commissioner Mejia was asking for more specifics.
Yeah, and so just so the other commissioners know, on last week's proposal, there was on each one of the grant categories, there was a very specific beginning figure and a very specific ending figure. So it just led me to assume that there were already chosen recipient organizations for these grant amounts, and I was just wondering why they weren't laid out. And again, I believe that, you know, it all comes down to transparency, and so I asked Ramiro to follow up with United Way and see, was there already recipient organizations chosen for the certain amounts that they had laid out? And if so, could we know who they were? So thank you.
So thank you to Jenica. She's on the screen. She helped facilitate this conversation with United Way. So let me, for the benefit of the public, let me just read through you quickly the individual proposal. This is just a set amount, and those, I just want to make sure that the board, similar to what the Thurston Strong proposal is, those are targeted amounts to the specific organizations, but yet we need to go through the sub-recipient agreements just to make sure they meet the specific guidelines of the Treasury. So, and again, this is a target amounts and a target organizations, and may or may not change this based on the sub-recipient requirements that we need to go through when we get down to the Treasury guidelines. So the proposal from United Way at this point is for Thurston County Food Bank and other food banks for $45,000, Family Support Center for $170,000, and those two provide shelter, operations, staff, and hotel room nights for homeless families and children. The next allocations for senior services, the seniors in need for $44,000, senior services meals and wheels for $105,000, and that is to provide support to senior nutrition and other basic needs and pandemic-related senior support. The next allocations for roof for $25,400, Catholic Community Service for $75,750, and Thurston County Food Bank for $375,000. And this will provide support to congregate feeding programs, countywide food bank operations, staff, bulk food purchases, bulk purchases of basic needs, non-food household hygiene, and sanitation items. And the last item is for Family Support Center for $24,540, roof for $44,000, YMCA for $200,000, Boys and Girls Club $270,000, $868, and that will be to provide support to youth support programs and parent-child support programs for homeless families. That is really the proposal of United Way. And if Chris Walls is listening to this conversation, I'd really like to express my appreciation for continuing to work with the county and providing services to those in need as a result of this pandemic.
Commissioner Edwards.
You've got Thurston County Food Bank kind of in there twice. What's that about?
It's because of the different programs. One is to provide shelter and other basic needs, and the other one is related to the food bank and other nutrition basic needs.
Does the food bank provide shelter issues?
Provide food to shelters.
Food to shelters. And that couldn't be consolidated. I mean, I'm just trying to make sure we don't have one group working against the other.
Eventually it was consolidated. What I was asked to do is from the programmatic point of view that was presented to you, how that program is going to be distributed.
And then the Boys and Girls Club and the YMCA. Do they both do similar things? I mean, I've actually spent some time around the Boys and Girls Clubs, and they're open and have mentoring programs and do your homework and pretty active all around the county. I think there's 5 of them around the county, and in which there's a lot of kids there. Does the YMCA do the same thing? I guess that's my question.
Well,
Does anybody know the answer to that?
well,
Do they have serve the same numbers? I see the Boys and Girls Clubs really serving big numbers of young people. And so I'm just asking, does the YMCA do the same thing?
well, those two organizations provide obviously services to youth in a different way. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, kind of, but do they have the same numbers? I mean, I believe the Boys and Girls Clubs are 7 days a week or something. They're going, and a lot of kids, a lot of parents depend on their kids spending time there. I'm just wondering, does the YMCA do the same thing? I mean, the dollar amounts are, you know, pretty close. Just wondering.
And Angelica can chime in if she has additional information, but the YMCA, the Boys and Girls Club, they have different programs.
I'm looking for numbers of kids served and families served.
I don't know, that will be part of the reporting requirements that we need to do later on. So this is, again, targeted amounts. At this point, it will be difficult, at least for me, to tell you it's gonna be serving 1,000 kids or 200 kids. That will be difficult at this point.
That's not very difficult for the Boys and Girls Club. They can tell you, if I called up the county director, I suppose they can give you that answer. Is there somebody doing the same thing for the YMCA? That's all I'm wondering about. I wanna make sure we're putting the money where the action is. And
Whatever information you need, we'll get to you if we have the needs.
Jenica, do you have any insight as to YMCA particularly, or?
We did not ask United Way for any of the numbers of people served within the organizations, but I would be happy to follow up, as I'm sure they'd be able to obtain that information.
There must be some basis. These dollar amounts are pretty specific. There's gotta be something behind them.
United Way worked with each of the organizations to go through their finances to identify gaps within their current program budgets and shortfalls. And so that were either caused from a COVID financial impacts or from increased services due to COVID.
I have a follow-up question to what you just said. With United Way working with these organizations, I mean, how were these organizations chosen? Was there an outreach? Was there, you know?
United Way has a list of Thurston County organizations that they work with, and these are organizations that are from that list.
I guess I'd like to have Jenica get back to us, just those two issues. You know, is there 300 kids in the YMCA and 2,000 kids in the Boys and Girls Club? I don't know the answer to that. I'd kind of like to know and make sure we're giving the group that gives the most service the most money. That's all I'm trying to do. Is that okay? Could we have Jenica get that information for us?
Yes.
Okay.
Other than that, I'm good.
All right then. Good to go on that one, Ramiro?
I'll bring this item next week because obviously you need additional information for direction.
All right, we'll see this next Tuesday for hopefully approval.
Okay.
Or adjustment if necessary. Next is long-term care, HB 1087. And I know I left some.
Yeah, this is you initially had a conversation related to the new law that passed that each county employee, in this case, will have to contribute part of their paycheck beginning in January 1st, 2022, related to the long-term care. And that is a state law. There's a lot of nuances as you discussed in this particular item. There's an option for county employees to get their own insurance to cover the same type of long-term care. And that will be a way as to how they can step back from this requirement imposed by the legislature. But also there was a little bit more conversation related to the when an employee becomes eligible. And it was a vesting period of 10 years. And, you know, for some individuals, they may see their retirement time to, with less than 6 years, there will be a contribution to a benefit they will not be able to receive down the road. So there's a lot of nuances to that. I was trying to verbalize a little bit what I knew about this new law. Then I asked the expert, Maria Ponte, our HR director, to walk us through this new law and allow the board to obviously ask questions and any additional information that you may need. Maria?
Good morning. This law is so new, I'm not sure I would consider myself an expert, but what I'll do this morning is provide you a high-level overview of what the long-term care program is, who qualifies, what the opt-out options are, some important considerations, for instance, anybody that is near retirement, as well as what Human Resources is doing to try to bring in an option for our employees. So the legislature in 2019 passed this long-term care program, and I may refer to it as LTC or the program so that I don't stumble through the title. And it'll be funded with an employment tax of 58.58% of the payroll tax on all employee wages. As the employer, we are required to collect these contributions and remit to the Washington State Employment Security Department starting January 21st of 2022. Most Washington State employees will be required to participate, but there are 4 exceptions. The first one is self-employed individuals. The second one is employees of a federally recognized tribe. The third are employees covered by a current collective bargaining agreement in effect as of October of 2017. And when those contracts open, then we can begin negotiations with those groups. And then the fourth and final group is for employees who qualify for the exemption, and I'll provide more information on that later in my presentation. Benefits are limited to Washington State residents who have paid the premiums under the program for either a total of 10 years without interruption of five or more consecutive years, or 3 years within the last 6 years from the date of application for benefits. In addition, the employee must have worked at least 500 hours during each of the 10 years or each of the 3 years, whichever applies. So with respect to the tax opt-out provisions, there is a one-time window to opt out of this tax and waive the right to receive benefits. This process requires an employee to attest to the Washington State Employment Security Department that they have obtained qualifying private long-term care insurance before November 1st of 2021. So what that means is the policy must be active on November 1st or before. So by October 31st, to be sure you really want to have that policy in place. Right now, Employment Security has not released what the attestation will look like. We're monitoring their website, but there's not much available. Was there a question?
No, sorry.
Okay, well, I'll continue. The attestation opt-out period is only from October 1st of 2021 through December 31st of 2022. And employees may opt out if they are 18 years or older on the day they submit the application for exemption, and they attest that they have other qualifying long-term care insurance. If approved, the state will provide the employee with a letter, which they must submit to their current employer and any future employers in Washington state. So employees will want to keep that letter safely guarded. And once the employee opts out, they cannot opt back into the program. So this opt-out is permanent. So some of the important considerations that I believe Commissioner Menser and Commissioner Edwards have alluded to is that unlike other state insurance programs, there is no cap on wages. So for example, an employee earning $50,000 per year would contribute $290 annually, while an employee earning $150,000 a year would contribute $870. But there's not a commensurate additional benefits or coverage for those contributing more to the fund. In addition, an employee could pay into this fund, and if they leave the state of Washington, they will not be eligible for benefits, even if they vested prior to relocating. So for really anybody that is within, let's say, 5 years of retirement, they could possibly pay these premiums but never qualify for the benefit. So in terms of what HR is doing, we're evaluating 2 different insurers to see what benefits and options they can give to our employees. Obviously, there's a cost-benefit analysis on their part, and one of the big considerations is that many employees will opt in and then opt out of the state, and then come 2022, drop that coverage, because nothing in the law says that you have to maintain this optional coverage. So that's a risk that they could go through all of this work, insure individuals, and then they get mass people dropping out. So we should, I'm hoping, have more information by within the next week or so. We've provided some employee census to one of the insurance providers. And as soon as we have a recommendation for which one we believe has the better options, I'll work to do another presentation and brief the board on that. So with that, that's my high level overview. I'd be glad to answer any questions that I can.
I'm waiting for 2 more weeks or a week or whatever.
I'm kind of confused with this. So you said that if someone were to leave or move out of state, they wouldn't be eligible to.
They would not be entitled to coverage. So how the law is, it's called portability. So this insurance coverage is not portable outside of the state of Washington if you utilize the state. But if we use a private insurer, that typically is portable somewhere else. So for me, I have family outside of Washington. When I retire, there's probably a high probability I may not reside here. And so I would be very interested in having coverage that's not the state mandated coverage.
The vesting, it says you vest after you've paid premiums for 3 within the last 6 years. So it just takes 3. Why did you say 5? If you're within 5 years of retirement, you won't vest. You would vest because you've paid for 3 years, right?
Oh, that's the second option. So there's the 2 vesting options. There's a total of 10 years without interruption of 5 years or more. So it does depend on how long you have been employed.
But I'm saying it like, to me, that's for somebody that's maybe in and out of county employment or in and out of some kind of employment over a period of time, or they're not going to be able to, or they are within, closer to retirement. But it seems like option B, which I hadn't heard before, which is why I'm focused on it, is just 3 years.
3 years within the last 6 years from the date of application.
3 more years from January, so 2022, 2023, 2024, unvested.
So correct. But the benefits will not come to fruition until 2025. I think that's when the plan first takes effect.
Okay. The other thing that's really, well, that's better than what I'd heard before, so that's good. The other thing that I learned from the school district is that there's, like, in terms of going private and opting out, there's two different, fundamentally different kinds of plans. One is just basically a replacement for what the state's offering, long-term care, and usually the plans are better or more coverage for less money. But then there's this hybrid option where it's quite a bit more expensive, but it also functions as life insurance plus long-term care. And that's great if you don't have life insurance, but for people that have all the life insurance they need and are trying to minimize the cost of this out of their paycheck, that's not a good option. In the school district's case, they offered both options through the school district, and then the one that was the first one I mentioned, just the replacement, they pulled out. So now all that the teachers, employees, and families, which includes me, my wife's a teacher, are the only option we have now is this much more expensive hybrid option that I don't personally need because I have tons of life insurance. So I guess I'm hopeful that whatever the county can find will include that option for just a replacement for the state's plan, because it's portable, it's cheaper. As you point out, if you're on the higher end of the wage scale, it's way cheaper to go with a private plan than this state because there's no scale here for what you're getting and what you're paying. So anyway, I'm just throwing that out there that, you know, I was saddened to see what happened with the school district employees, and I'm hoping we can avoid that and find an insurer that will offer our employees a long-term care plan.
Yes. So one of the insurers does have an option without the life insurance component. We're providing them with an employee census, and then I think they make a determination of whether to offer us their program or not. I think this could get costly to the insurers. And so I think that they're doing their best to make sure that I guess it's a sound business decision on their part.
Commissioner Edwards.
I guess this looks like the state wants you to pay a tax of 0.58%, looks like, on whatever wage category you're in. Is that category calculated on the maximum wage that you get, or is it calculated on your take home?
I believe it is the not your take home, but your pre-tax.
So it's about a 1% wage that the county, that the state wants. They want 1% of your wages.
No.
Well, by the time you take home and all that, I mean, you know, if you're making $100,000 a year, you take home $70,000, say.
True, but
So,
all
but they want
taxes
it
are
based on
computed
100. On the total
gross.
amount, sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
gross pay.
So, yeah, that's fine.
All
It's
right.
just a rip off by the state, is the way I look at it, but I got a different point of view. than maybe
Hopefully
others.
someone will get long-term care benefits.
Yeah, well,
Sure. Important, but
Okay, we good on that topic?
Maria?
for now, I'd like to hear more in her week or whatever she's gonna.
Yeah, we'll
Come
come
up
back
with
when
more
we have some
information.
specifics related to private insurance.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Thank
Maria.
you.
All right, we got 15 minutes left, and our next topic is the proposed council and racial equity. County Manager.
I'd just like to provide you with an update. Please don't feel this is a decision that I received from the board today. As part of you passing the resolution of 15995 declaring racism a crisis in Thurston County, one of the elements, it was for me to come back and revamp the cultural diversity of the Human Rights Council that one existed. So this resolution does that, repeals that particular council and brings forth the new council with a different purpose, different objective, and different makeup. So this is again a draft resolution. Let me walk you through the proposed objective, purpose of the council. And then I will walk you through the next steps before you can consider approving this final ordinance. In section 3, The purpose of the council is to advise and engage the county commissioners and county manager on matters of social and racial equity within all county departments and the policies, processes, and practices used to accomplish the mission of Thurston County. The council's engagement shall include the following: provide an input to the county manager to conduct a workplace assessment to understand the current state of diversity, equity, and inclusion experience by staff, vendors, customers, clients, and constituents. Identify real and perceived barriers to underrepresented Black, Indigenous, and communities of color BIPOC community members that prevents full participation in the access, use, and receipt of county government services and resources, especially when compared to non-BIPOC residents. Identify opportunities to increase the participation of underrepresented BIPOC community members in the development and implementation of county government ordinances, regulations, policies, and programs. Serving as a conduit for consultation and input across all levels of county government to ensure effective engagement, collaboration, and outcome with BIPOC community members. Making recommendations on the forum structure and delivery of critical conversations on race and equity within the structure of county government in the larger community. Providing input and collaborating with county staff to develop and implement a county racial equity action plan in other efforts aimed to creating a more equitable community. That's what we have envisioned at this point to be the objective of the council. At this point, we have the council to have a membership between 5 and no more to 11. And those committee members will be approved by the Board of County Commissioners. And we walk through some of the roles and responsibilities of the committee.
Can I make a recommendation?
Yeah, any type of recommendation, please let me know. So,
Do you want them now or later?
So let me walk you through the next steps, perhaps. So the next step in the process is please provide your comments within the next week so we can incorporate your comments if you have any. And the next step, we're going to be engaging members of our community. They will look at this ordinance to provide feedback. I'm still looking to see what will be a good group of individuals that can help us review and revise this ordinance. And when we get that information back into this ordinance, citizens' input, we'll bring this as a final draft for you for your consideration. So any comments, suggestions that you like, please let me know, whether you'd like to do it now or later, your choice.
Commissioner McHugh is done.
I believe that the council membership should also have staff members, either 1 or 2 staff members from the county, just because they work here that are BIPOC. I feel their input is also needed because since they are working members, I believe they would know more, especially if it's, the workplace assessment. I think that we need staff member input as well.
So is your suggestion to have county staff be part of the actual council or county staff to provide support to the council?
County staff to be part of the council too. And we can make it 2.
My question is on E, on purpose of the council. Can you give me a little better description of what E, what are you really trying to say there?
Making recommendations
on the forum.
On the forum structure and
Yeah,
deliver
we're
critical
putting together
conversations of race, equity, and
together a
structure.
forum? What are we doing?
So what it does is really what we try to create is this group to be a forum as to how they can provide recommendations to the structure of county government in the larger community. And that's the intent of that is really because the conversation on racial equity is going to be difficult. It's going to be tasking and it's going to be critical. And the intent of that is to create a forum for anybody who wants to be part of that. All members of the public who likes to provide perspective is to create that forum on the structure of county government. That is the intent. But if you have any suggestions as to how we can make it clear, certainly.
I don't know that I have any suggestions right now. I just think that's murky is all. That's all I'm saying. Now you're asking for an input. I don't know. But it reads kind of murky to me and I don't know why.
Ramiro, I'm curious about the makeup of the council as well. I'm not familiar with how, I know there are other committees and councils out there, and I'm not sure how they're typically structured. Or did this come from somebody, like, I'm not sure how, like Lacey just launched a commission on equity. Not sure what what the racial composition of their committee is structured as, and if you base this on a particular model, or if there's other ways.
I researched a couple different models, and the city of Lacey has some components on this. So obviously we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. So we did have some components, and other counties have also gone through this effort. So there's accumulation of that. This is brewing at a high level. I don't have the specific answers in terms of the makeup and the specific representations. That is something that we need to continue to have the conversation before you consider adopting this ordinance. Yeah. Also, we are going to be hiring a racial equity program manager. That person really is going to help to consolidate all this and start implementing this for your final recommendation. So, good questions. At this high level, at this point, so there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and more information will come to you.
Maybe the person that eventually is going to be hired, wouldn't it be beneficial if that person was already on board as we put this together, kind of, if they come with some history?
Forward. I think the person is going to just come in the middle of a lot of things that is coming.
Okay.
But nothing is going to be finalized before this person is coming.
Oh, okay, good.
Just
some food for thought. Great.
Okay.
So more to come.
All right, that takes us to item 4, public testimony. Nothing there. And commissioners' items. Got 5 minutes. I'm sure that's enough, right, Commissioner? I'll start with Commissioner Mejia if you have one, a quick one. I guess we have each time to throw a quick one out there if we have one.
No, I'm fine, I'll pass it this time.
I'll let it ride. Give you the gift of time. Let the chair have this.
I'll just, last week we talked about the concept of me attending a port meeting. And I was told that the port meeting was gonna be the 13th. And if that's true and the board still wants me to do that, I'm gonna be out the rest of this week. So I'd kind of like to know that today so I can think about it today. And my next day in the office is Monday, which apparently is the day of the meeting, so.
I have, I believe, a voicemail from the executive director of the port. I was trying to get a hold of her last week, so.
You and I can talk, we have a meeting later this afternoon. Okay, so I'll
based on that.
So comment on that, Commissioner. We received a letter from Auditor Hall with kind of a little bit more details. I'm still kind of like on the idea that it would be beneficial for you to attend and let them know the kind of the stance of where the BoCC stands.
Okay, still interested in potentially.
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll see where that lies, and if I need to do that next Monday, I'll do it.
I guess coming back to your earlier question about, like, is it coming the end of July we're gonna get this census report, or do we know?
Sorry.
Oh, yeah, hey, chip in here. Yeah.
Introduce yourself for the record.
I'm Leah Mandan. I'm new here, clearly. So when I was at OFM, in my division was the population unit. So I actually emailed one of my colleagues over there, and he said that they're expecting Thurston County data to come out in a not great format in August, and then it looks like early September for the
Official.
wide distribution of the full Thurston County data.
In September.
Well, thank you. And thank you for jumping in and telling us.
I was like, I think I can help here.
Yeah, OFM, that's,
Yeah.
but they, you know, that all gets recalibrated by the census.
Yeah, yeah.
So the official release to the Thurston County data early September.
That's the hope.
Is the hope.
Okay, well, with that, then we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Have a good couple